Be me, 41 years old, sitting at this exact dinner table where I've fed my kids 1,000 meals, and I'm about to say something that most people would find absolutely unacceptable, but I believe with every fiber of my being. There's no such thing as reverse sexism, sweetie, because sexism requires systemic power. I'm explaining this to my daughter Emma, who's 11, because some boy at school called her bossy, and she called him a stupid male and got sent to the principal's office. I'm ready to fight that principal tomorrow morning, already composing the email in my head about gendered language and how girls are labeled bossy while boys are called leaders. My son Tyler is 8, pushing peas around his plate with his fork, half listening like he always does when I get into these explanations. This is my life now, single mother of 2, doing the work of 2 parents, constantly vigilant about the messages my children receive. It wasn't always like this. 5 years ago, I was married to Connor, thought we had a partnership, thought we were building something together. Turns out, he was just another man who wanted a wife to manage his household while he pursued his career and his hobbies. I was doing everything, working full-time as a project manager at a tech company, coming home to cook dinner, helping with homework, doing bedtime routines, while he played basketball twice a week with his buddies and somehow always had time for his weekend cycling club. When I brought it up, tried to explain the mental load, the invisible labor, he acted like I was keeping score, like partnership was some kind of competition. I do the yard work, he'd say, as if mowing the lawn once a week was equivalent to the constant daily grind of keeping humans alive. The divorce was his idea, actually, which still makes me angry when I think about it. I was trying to work on things, went to therapy, read books about relationships, but he said he felt attacked all the time, and couldn't do anything right, classic victim mentality. So now I'm here, in this 3-bedroom rental that costs more than our mortgage used to, doing it all myself, proving I never needed him in the first place. Emma is nodding along to my explanation about systemic power. She gets it, she's sharp as hell, reminds me of myself at that age. Already noticing inequalities, already questioning things, already standing up for herself. Tyler, though. Tyler is quieter, more internal. Sometimes I worry about him. He looks like his father. Same sandy hair, same green eyes, same way of retreating into himself when things get emotional. I try not to hold that against him. He's just a child. But sometimes I see Connor in his expressions, and I feel this tightness in my chest. Mom, Emma says, can I be excused? I have homework. I tell her yes. Clear your plate, sweetie. And she does. She's responsible. I've raised her to be independent. Now it's just Tyler and me at the table. He's still pushing those peas around. Hasn't touched his chicken. You need to eat your protein, Ty, I say, but gently. I'm not one of those mothers who forces food. He takes a small bite, chewing slowly. Outside, I can hear the neighbors, some family gathering, lots of male voices, laughing loudly, probably drinking beer, probably watching sports. I turned down their invitation to their Labor Day barbecue last month. I don't need that kind of energy around my kids. The father over there, Mark, he's exactly the type, always revving his truck engine early in the morning, always talking over his wife when they're both outside. I've tried to be friendly with her, Jennifer, offered her some books, invited her for coffee, but she seems content in her situation, which is sad, but I can't save everyone. Tyler puts his fork down, looks at me with those serious eyes he gets sometimes. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course, honey. You can ask me anything. I'm proud of this, that I've created an environment where my children feel safe to ask questions, to be curious, to challenge ideas. Unlike Connor, who used to just tell Tyler because I said so whenever he asked why about anything. Tyler is quiet for a moment, like he's choosing his words carefully. This is unusual for him. He's usually pretty straightforward. Why are men always the villains? I blink. What do you mean, sweetheart? But even as I'm asking, I feel something shifting, some awareness creeping in that I don't want to look at directly. In the movies we watch, he says, and his voice is so sincere, so genuinely confused. And the books you read to me, and when you talk to Aunt Sarah or Grandma, or when you're on the phone, men are always the bad guys. I open my mouth, but nothing comes out. My mind is suddenly racing through our movie nights, Tuesday and Friday traditions. Always my pick, because I'm careful about media consumption. I'm mindful about what enters their developing minds. What have we watched recently? That animated film about the princess who saves herself, where the prince character is vain and useless, and the real villain is the kingdom's patriarchal system. Before that, the one about the girl who runs away from an arranged marriage and finds a community of women in the forest. Before that, the documentary about women scientists that I thought would be educational. But yes, now that I'm thinking about it, focused heavily on how male colleagues stole their work and took credit. Emma loved them all. We had great discussions afterward. Tyler watched quietly, never complained. I thought he was enjoying them too. There are all kinds of stories, Ty, I hear myself saying, but my voice sounds distant. But not the ones we watch, he says, not argumentative, just factual, just observing. And in the books, the dads are always mean or stupid or gone, and the boys at school are always the problem. And you said Daddy left because he didn't respect you, and Uncle Jason is selfish, and Grandpa was emotionally unavailable, and Mr. Patterson across the street is probably sexist, and... Tyler, that's not... But I stop, because is it not? He's 8 years old, and he's just listing back to me things I've said, patterns I've created, and I'm sitting here feeling like the floor is tilting. When did I last read him a book with a positive father figure? I'm trying to think, genuinely trying to remember. We read that series about the girl detective. No father in the picture, just an aunt. Before that, the one about the boy wizard, but I always editorialized during that one, pointed out the problematic elements, how the headmaster was manipulative, how the father figures were either absent or deeply flawed. I thought I was teaching critical thinking. What about movies with his father during Connor's weekends? They watch different things there, I know they do. I've heard Tyler mention superhero films, and I've bitten my tongue, didn't want to be the fun police, but I always gently reminded him afterward about the problematic masculinity in those narratives. How the heroes solve everything with violence. How women are sidekicks or prizes. I was trying to give him the tools to analyze media critically. Wasn't I? Tyler is looking at me, waiting for an answer. Movies and books need conflict, honey, I say, trying to organize my thoughts. And traditionally, because of power structures in society, men have held more power, so they often are the ones who... Much ears. I'm doing it again. I can hear myself doing it. I'm giving him a framework where male equals, powerful equals corrupt, equals villain. It's not wrong exactly. It's based on real analysis of real systems. But he's 8. He's not asking about systemic power structures. He's asking why every story in his life has taught him that people who look like him, who share his gender, are the problem. Oh God. Your father isn't a bad person, I say suddenly, and it feels like pulling teeth. Tyler's eyes widen slightly, like he's surprised to hear me say it. When was the last time I said something neutral about Connor, let alone positive? I try to think back. After the divorce, I was so angry, so hurt, so convinced I'd been wronged. And I was wronged. I was doing everything. He wasn't pulling his weight. But did I explain it that way to the kids? Or did I just make comments, little asides, a tone of voice, an eye roll when his name came up? Daddy loves you very much, I continue. And Tyler is just watching me now, something shifting in his expression. I think about the way I handle the custody exchanges. Connor comes to pick them up, and I'm polite, but cold. I don't engage, I hand over their bags and close the door. If they come back with a story about something fun they did, I listen. But do I really listen? Or do I just wait for the problematic part, the thing I can gently correct, the teachable moment about why that joke wasn't funny or that comment was inappropriate? Emma went through a phase where she didn't want to go to her dad's. I was secretly pleased, I'll admit it. I didn't encourage it out loud, but I didn't discourage it either. I let her stay home twice, told Connor she wasn't feeling well. He was hurt, I could tell, but I told myself he needed to earn their affection, needed to be a better parent. Tyler always wanted to go though. Every time he'd have his bag packed early, waiting by the door, and I felt, what did I feel about that? Rejected? Competitive? Worried he'd come back parroting his father's worldview? I'm staring at my son, and I'm seeing him clearly maybe for the first time in years. Not as an extension of me, not as a small person I'm molding, but as his own complete human who has been absorbing everything in his environment and drawing conclusions. Tell me about the books at Dad's house, I say. Tyler perks up. We're reading this series about a kid and his dad who go on adventures. They're trying to find these ancient artifacts, and the dad is really smart and funny, and he teaches the kids stuff about history, and they work together. He's animated now, in a way I don't see often at my house. And last weekend we watched a movie about a father and daughter, and the dad was trying to protect her, but also let her be independent, and it was cool because they both saved each other. I've never heard about any of this. Why didn't you tell me about these? Tyler shrugs, looks down at his plate. You don't really like Dad's stuff. The simplicity of that statement is devastating. My 8-year-old son has learned to compartmentalize his life, to not share half of his experiences with me because he's picked up that I disapprove. Not through anything I've said directly. I've never told him not to talk about his father's house. But children are perceptive, they rate energy, they learn what's welcome and what isn't. I think about my friend group, the women I talk to on the phone, the conversations Tyler would have overheard. Sarah going through her own divorce, both of us trading stories about our ex's inadequacies. My mother, visiting, talking about my father's emotional distance, how men of that generation didn't know how to express feelings. My colleague from work calling about her husband forgetting their anniversary again. Every conversation a confirmation of the same narrative. Men are disappointing, men are the problem, men don't do the work. It's not that these conversations are lies. These are our real experiences, our real frustrations. But what has Tyler been hearing? That his gender is a deficit. That growing up male means growing up to be a disappointment. That he's on a trajectory toward becoming everything we complain about. I feel sick. My feminism, my activism, the work I'm so proud of. I volunteer with an organization that mentors girls in STEM. I've been doing it for 6 years. I organize an annual fundraiser for women's health services. I write letters to representatives about reproductive rights and pay equity. I truly believe in this work. I believe women face systemic disadvantages that need to be actively countered. But somewhere in my commitment to lifting up girls and women, I stopped seeing boys and men as fully human. They became the obstacle, the opposition, the source of the problem, and I brought that framework home. I decorated my daughter's room with posters about girl power and women who changed history. I bought her books about feminist icons and tickets to see female-led films. Tyler's room has dinosaurs and space themes because I let him pick when he was 5 and he liked those things. But did I ever actively give him male role models the way I gave Emma female ones? Did I point out men who were kind, emotionally intelligent, collaborative, nurturing? Or did I just let him figure out masculinity on his own while I focused my energy on making sure Emma knew her worth? There are lots of good men, Tyler, I say now, and I'm scrambling mentally to think of examples. My mind feels blank, like I've trained myself not to see them. Your teacher, Mr. Roberts, he's patient and creative. Tyler nods. And your soccer coach, he's teaching you teamwork and sportsmanship. Another nod. And your dad, I force myself to continue. Your dad is trying his best, and he loves you. And just because our marriage didn't work doesn't mean he's a bad person. This is the most generous I've been about Connor in 5 years. It feels uncomfortable, like wearing shoes on the wrong feet. But it's also true. Connor wasn't a terrible husband, he was an oblivious one. He didn't see the invisible labor because he'd never been taught to look for it. He thought doing the visible tasks was enough because that's what his father modeled. Was he willing to learn when I tried to teach him? I thought the answer was no, but I'm remembering now, times he did try. He started doing bedtime routines with Emma after I asked. He took over the grocery shopping for a few months. It wasn't perfect, he'd forget items or buy the wrong brands, and I'd get frustrated and just do it myself because it was easier. Did I shut down his attempts to help because they weren't done my way? Did I create a dynamic where he felt like he couldn't win, so he stopped trying? And when he said he felt attacked all the time, was there truth in that? I think about the way I'd bring up issues, not gently, not as a team problem to solve together, but as evidence of his failure. You didn't notice the trash was full again. I guess I'm the only one who cares about the kids' homework. Must be nice to have hobbies while I'm drowning here. I thought I was asking for help. Was I just expressing contempt? There's this thing I read once, years ago, before the divorce, about how contempt is the #1 predictor of relationship breakdown. I dismissed it at the time, thought it was some patriarchal psychology trying to tone police women's anger. But sitting here, looking at my son, I'm wondering if my anger, valid as it was, curdled into something else. Something that poisoned not just my marriage, but my children's understanding of half the human population. Tyler's eating now, taking small bites of chicken, the tension in his shoulders slightly released. Just by acknowledging his question, by not dismissing it, something has shifted. I think I've made some mistakes, I tell him. He looks up, surprised. I don't usually admit mistakes, I realize. I'm the parent, I'm supposed to have the answers, supposed to be modeling strength. But what kind of strength is it if I can't acknowledge when I'm wrong? I think I've been so focused on making sure you and Emma understand that girls are just as capable and important as boys, which is true, that I maybe made it seem like boys aren't as good, which isn't true. Tyler is listening. Really listening. People are individuals, I continue, trying to find the right words. And everyone, regardless of gender, deserves to be seen as a whole person with good qualities and flaws, and your gender doesn't determine whether you're going to be a good person or not. Your choices do. This is basic. This is so basic. This is what I would have said I believed if anyone asked me. But my actions, my choices, my curated worldview told a different story. Can we watch different movies? Tyler asks. Such a simple request. Yes, I say. What would you like to watch? He thinks about it. Maybe something where the dad isn't bad, or where boys and girls work together? My instinct, my immediate instinct, is to control this, to suggest specific titles that I've vetted that meet my criteria. I know exactly which films have positive messages about gender cooperation while still acknowledging systemic issues. But I stop myself. Why don't you pick next movie night, I say. Whatever you want to watch. His face lights up in a way that makes my chest hurt. When was the last time I let him just choose? Emma comes back downstairs, homework already done. She's so efficient. What are you guys talking about? She asks. Tyler pointed out that maybe we've been watching too many movies with the same kind of message, I say carefully. Emma frowns. What message? That men are usually the villains, Tyler says. Emma shrugs. They usually are, though, she says matter-of-factly, and I hear myself in her tone. This is what I've taught her, this casual dismissal, this assumption. That's a generalization, Em, I say gently, and generalizations about any group of people are unfair. She looks at me like I've grown a second head. But you always say... I know what I always say, I interrupt, and I'm realizing I might need to be more careful about how I say things. This is going to be a process, I can see that now. I can't undo years of messaging in one dinner conversation. Emma is already 11, already forming her worldview, already taking my framework and running with it. Is she going to grow up viewing half of humanity as the enemy? Is she going to enter relationships with men already convinced they're going to disappoint her? Will she have contempt from the start, the way I developed it, over time? Tyler is going to grow up with his own damage, trying to reconcile being male with being good, trying to prove he's not like those men his mother complained about. Or maybe he'll rebel entirely, reject everything I've taught him, decide feminism itself is the problem. I've seen that happen, read articles about young men radicalized in the other direction, and I always thought those were failures of parenting, mothers who weren't paying attention. But maybe some of them were mothers like me, who pushed too hard, who made their sons feel like their gender was something to apologize for. After dinner, I clean up while the kids watch TV. I can hear some cartoon, something Tyler picked. Emma is humoring him. I'm loading the dishwasher, wiping down counters, doing the endless tasks that keep a household running. I still do all of this alone. That hasn't changed. Connor has the kids every other weekend and one night a week. But the daily grind is mine. The mental load is still mine. My feminism came from something real, something lived. The exhaustion of being the default parent, the one who remembers the school forms and the doctor appointments and the grocery list. The frustration of being in meetings at work with men who talk over me, who take credit for my ideas. The fear of walking alone at night, keys between my fingers. The 1,000 tiny ways that being a woman in this world is harder. I didn't make that up. That's not bias, that's reality. But somewhere between recognizing systemic inequality and teaching my children about it, I crossed a line. I stopped talking about systems and started talking about men. I stopped critiquing patriarchy and started dismissing individual human beings. I made it personal when it should have been political. Or maybe, I made it political when my kids needed it to be personal. They needed to understand people as individuals first, with complexity and nuance, before they could understand systems and structures. Instead, I gave them the framework first and let them fill in the individuals according to the pattern. My phone buzzes. It's Connor. Hey, wanted to confirm I'm picking them up Friday at 6. I usually just respond with a thumbs up emoji, keeping it minimal. Instead, I type, yes, 6 works. Also wanted to say thank you for reading with Tyler. He mentioned the adventure series and seems really engaged with it. 3 dots appear, disappear, appear again. Oh yeah, he loves those books. Surprised he told you about them. That stings, but it's fair. I'm realizing I haven't been very open to hearing about his time with you. Trying to do better. Long pause. I appreciate that. Another pause. He's a good kid. They both are. You've done a great job with them. I feel tears prickling, and I'm annoyed at myself for it. When was the last time Connor and I said anything kind to each other? You're a good dad, I type, and it feels like pulling out a splinter, painful but necessary. They love their time with you. I can see he's typing, stopping, typing again. That means a lot. Thank you. This doesn't fix everything. Connor still only has them 20% of the time, while I have them 80%. I'm still doing the majority of the work. The inequality of that is still real. But maybe I can acknowledge that inequality without making him the villain. Maybe I can advocate for more equal parenting without contempt. Maybe I can teach my kids about systemic issues while still helping them see the men in their lives as fully human. It's going to be complicated. I don't have a neat framework for this. No clean analysis. My activism has always been about clarity, about clear lines between oppressor and oppressed, about calling things what they are. But parenting can't work that way. Parenting is messy and contradictory and requires holding multiple truths at once. I can believe in fighting patriarchy and also teach my son that he's not the patriarch. I can raise my daughter to be strong and also teach her that strength doesn't require viewing men as weak or bad. I can acknowledge systemic male violence while not making my children afraid of individual men. I can validate women's anger while not letting it become the only emotion I model. Later that night, after the kids are in bed, I'm sitting in my room looking at my bookshelf. It's full of feminist theory, memoirs by women, books about women's history. All books I value, all perspectives that shaped me. But what's missing? I get my laptop and start searching. Books about healthy masculinity, books about fathers and sons, books that show boys as sensitive and creative and kind without making those qualities despite their gender. I make a list. Then I go through our movie queue and I start adding things. Not mindlessly, I'm still going to be thoughtful about media, but I'm looking for balance now, for stories where men and women are both heroic, both flawed, both human. It feels vulnerable somehow, like I'm abandoning my principles. But my principles were supposed to be about equality. When did equality start meaning elevation of one group through dismissal of another? I think about the organization I volunteer with, mentoring girls in STEM. We talk a lot about the barriers girls face, the discrimination, the lack of role models, all true, all important. But I've been in meetings where we've made jokes about men in tech, rolled our eyes about bros and mansplaining. The girls laugh. They're learning the language, learning to bond over shared frustration. Are they also learning contempt? Am I helping to create another generation of women who enter male-dominated fields already defensive, already assuming the worst? What if instead we taught them to expect equality, to assume good faith until, proven otherwise, to see male colleagues as potential allies rather than inevitable obstacles? That feels risky. That feels like setting them up for disappointment. But maybe it's also setting them up for possibility. My phone has a text from Sarah. Brad forgot to pick up his daughter again. I swear men are useless. Normally, I'd commiserate, add my own story, bond over shared frustration. Instead, I write, "That's really frustrating. Have you talked to him about setting up a reminder system?" She sends back a confused emoji. "Since when are you solution-oriented about male incompetence? LOL." She's joking, but she's also not. "Trying something new," I send back. "Letting men off the hook," she responds, and I can feel the slight edge. "Holding them accountable without writing them off as inherently defective," I type. Wow, okay, someone's in a mood. I almost backtrack, almost smooth it over, but I don't. Sorry, just been thinking about the messages I'm sending my kids. Tyler asked me why men are always villains in everything we watch and read, and I didn't have a good answer. Long pause. "He's 8? He asked that?" "Yeah." "Damn." "Yeah? What did you say?" "That I need to do better." Another pause. "You're a good mom for hearing him." I don't feel like a good mom. I feel like I've been so focused on protecting my daughter from sexism that I didn't notice I was teaching my son he was inherently the problem. I feel like I've been so angry at my ex-husband that I let that anger color my children's understanding of their father. I feel like I took my politics, which are real and based on real analysis, and turned them into a weapon that hurt my own kid. But maybe recognizing that is the first step. Maybe I can't undo the years of subtle and not so subtle messaging. Maybe Tyler will carry some of this with him, work through it in therapy someday. Maybe Emma will have to unlearn some of the contempt I've modeled. But I can start now. I can start being more careful, more balanced, more human in how I talk about men. Not because sexism isn't real, not because patriarchy doesn't exist, but because my children need to grow up seeing everyone as individuals first. They need to learn to critique systems without dehumanizing people. They need to understand inequality without internalizing hate. That's harder than what I've been doing. It's easier to have a clear enemy, a simple narrative. It's easier to bond with other women over shared frustration with men than to do the nuanced work of acknowledging complexity. It's easier to curate a media diet that confirms my worldview than to actively seek out perspectives that challenge it. But easy isn't what my kids need. They need a mother who can hold complexity, who can fight for justice while still seeing individuals clearly, who can be angry at systems while still loving the people caught up in them. I go check on them before I sleep. Emma is sprawled across her bed, covers kicked off, surrounded by books. About girl scientists and activists, I don't want to take that away from her. Those stories matter, that representation matters, but I need to add more, not replace. Tyler is curled up small, clutching a stuffed dinosaur he's had since he was 3. He looks so young, so innocent. He's going to grow up to be a man, and I want him to grow up believing that's okay. Not something to apologize for, not something to overcome. Just a fact of who he is, neutral with all the possibility in the world for who he becomes. Tomorrow, I'll take them to the library. I'll let Tyler pick books. I'll ask Emma to help me find stories about boys and girls working together. I'll start the slow work of balancing what I've built. Tonight, sitting in the doorway of my son's room, I'm just acknowledging the weight of what I've done. The worldview I created, the bias I instilled, the damage I didn't mean to cause. I'm a feminist, I still am, I believe in this work, but I'm also a mother, and those two identities need to work together, not in opposition. I need to raise children who believe in equality, not children who believe one gender is inherently better or worse than the other. It's going to be hard to unlearn my own patterns, to catch myself before I make a dismissive comment, to choose media that challenges rather than confirms, to speak about their father with respect even when I'm frustrated, to model criticism of systems without contempt for people. But Tyler asked me a question at the dinner table tonight. Innocent, genuine, devastating. And in that moment of horrifying clarity, I saw what I'd built. Now, I have to do the work of building something better. Something that prepares my daughter to fight for equality without teaching her to hate. Something that lets my son grow into his gender without shame. It starts tomorrow. It starts with small changes, different movies, different books, different conversations. It starts with me being brave enough to question my own certainty, to admit when my politics have become prejudice, to do better, for them, for the kind of adults I want them to become, for the kind of world I actually want to build. Not one where we've just flipped the script on who gets to be dismissive, but one where we've written a new story entirely, where everyone gets to be fully human, where my son can ask questions and be heard, where my daughter can be strong without being cruel, where I can be a feminist and a good mother to both my children. It's possible. It has to be. Because the alternative, the world I was creating without meaning to, is not the one I want. Tonight, for the first time in years, I feel the weight of what I've been carrying. All that anger, all that certainty, all that contempt. It was supposed to protect my children. Instead, it was poisoning them. Tomorrow, I start letting it go. Not the activism, not the fight for equality, but the part that turned half of humanity into villains in my children's story. Tyler deserves better. Emma deserves better. And maybe, if I'm honest, so do I.